All right, so we've got another legend on today. They call him the favorite of the coaching calls. We've got James over here. James has been on for a couple months now, made a ton of progress since then. Before we get into it, James, just want to say great to have you here, man.
Thank you, brother. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So I thought for everyone watching, do you mind just giving a quick intro to who you are and what your agency does?
Sure. So I come from a background of media buying. I 2 years ago decided to start my own agency. We went into the e-com space, and yeah, it was a bit of a slow burner for the first couple of months. We had two clients here and there. Kind of trying to build more of a base before scaling. I thought that was really important, is to rather build slow. Yeah, kind of carried on like that. Got a few more clients, but we really hit a few plateaus. I'd done a few different coaching things, which definitely got us to a level. But it became a bit of a nightmare, as I'm sure any agency owner can relate. Is you build this beast, but you're still very reliant on you. So a large reason that I joined the course was to really figure out, first and foremost, how I could improve my structure. So like I didn't create this thing that I actually ended up hating. So that was really important to me. And then also finding a way that I could, predictably book meetings, as opposed to like in the past, we use like a ton of email marketing, where spending hours and lots of cash on setting up domains, using different softwares. So really just utilizing what we had at our disposal and maximizing that as much as possible.
Sounds good. And the thing is, like, you were always great at what you did. Like, just to go long back when we met, it was probably
Mm.
a year ago, maybe. Um, so we were talking just about agency stuff because you're based in Cape Town as well. When we started connecting, I think it was probably on Instagram or LinkedIn or something like that. I guess what is the agency like at the time? What is
Mm.
the main problem you're facing?
For sure. So our service delivery was really good. We
Yeah.
work on a performance with a base structure, so we were getting compensated well for that. But we were very reliant on a few clients. We didn't really have any, predictable system set up. We tried a few things based on recommendations, but again, it was like a lot of effort to, really get low quality clients, which we weren't really happy about. I was like, the whole company was also dependent on my back, so like I was doing everything. I was doing I'm also like an only founder, so I don't have the luxury of having someone else help me with it. So I was doing sales, service delivery, back end, basically the entire process. I had an assistant working with me at the time, and then a VA who was just doing like tedious, like kind of your 4 hour work week tasks of data entry, things like that. So yeah, I was kind of at a stuck point. I remember meeting with you, and I was like, I think we sat down and I was like, just like, dude, I need structure. Like, I don't know what's going on. I'm not enjoying the agency. Like, it's paying well, things are going well, but like everything's on me. And I think like a real realization point was last year March. I went to Thailand with my family, and we had just signed like 3 clients just before going. And I remember like the whole time there, I was like, because of the time difference, they were in the US and we were Thailand, so it ended up being like a 12-hour difference. But then I was doing everything. I didn't have anyone to fall back on. I didn't have a team that I could really, rely on. I still was like heavily involved in the input. Um, so yeah, that ended up being like a nightmare holiday. I think afterwards, my girlfriend said to me, she's like, if we ever take a holiday and you work like that again, like it's over. Like I'm not coming with, or like you're like, I'll dump you straight away. So yeah, it was like just a realization. I also had no peace. Like I came back feeling more stressed than I was before I left. So yeah,
Yeah.
like it was definitely starting to creep into my personal life quite a bit as well.
Bro, it's so, the way you describe it is so accurate because most people hear like, yeah, we're stuck doing everything. But when you explain it like that, like you're literally
Yeah.
on a holiday where you're meant to like, whatever, relax and enjoy it, but everything's just stuck on you. It's crazy. Um,
Exactly. I still remember, I think there was like some nights where I was up till like 3 in the morning because of the time difference, trying to take client check-in calls and, launch ads
yeah,
that they
man.
wanted launched. And it was just like, it ended up being like, I almost wish that I hadn't gone on the holiday, which like kind of sucked
Yeah,
when you're in like a beautiful, I mean, you're staying in a 8 bedroom villa, like on the beach. It's
yeah,
like, you should be really enjoying it, kind of kicking back and ensuring, like knowing that you've got a team that can run things. And yeah, like, it's like, I'm definitely not in a perfect place, but definitely moving towards that. Like a lot of the stuff through
yeah,
what you guys have showed me, and the systems and processes that we put in place, and especially just like even just the reflection points that you like had me go through the course, and really like figuring out, where you're at, and how the agency structure looks. Because I think it's like on paper, like you sometimes, I mean, like, I'm sorry, before you put it down into paper, it seems like you've got it all figured out, and then you
Mm.
actually like start to kind of map it out. And you're like, I remember that, like, there was the one exercise we went through, and it kind of, you end up creating what almost looks like an octopus, where it's like you're like the
Mm.
center, and there's like millions of little legs going off you, because you're the central point of
Yeah.
communication for clients, for contractors, for team members, for outreach, prospect. Like, it's mad. Then you've also got family and friends and relationships that you're trying to maintain,
Yeah.
that are also trying to come at you throughout the day. So I remember, like, I think like my breaking point was, I worked out the one day that I was getting on average like between 300 to 500 messages a day, like all in all, which was just
That's
insane, because
insane.
it's like team members wanting things checked. It was, clients checking in on things. Obviously, we were going back and forth with those. We had emails with accountants, prospects. Like, it was just constant nonstop. So I remember, like, I actually was like resenting my phone, because I just didn't want to look at it, because I
Mm.
knew that, like, as soon as that phone opens up, or like I take it off airplane mode, it's just messages all day. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it is like, I think when you really put it down and you realize like you're in the thick of it, it becomes quite a bit.
That's insane. But so accurate. Um,
Mm,
at
mm,
that time, when it was all of that chaos and stuff,
mm.
obviously it's not completely gone now. There's probably always going to be chaos. But at that time, what was your goal with the agency?
So my goal has always been to like, and I remember we spoke about it at the beginning. Like, I never want to retire young. Like, I think retirement is a bit of a scam. I think I always want to be involved in something. But I wanted to get to a point where, I had this business that was like actually a business, not just because I think, like, for the longest time I was still a glorified contractor working within the business. And obviously it's necessary at the beginning. You've got to get it, especially when you're bootstrapping it and it's just you at the beginning. You really do fall into that. But yeah, I essentially wanted something that, I could take a holiday from, and it could still run without me. I think I also had another mentor in the space who was just like, if you can't actually leave your business for 30 days, you don't really have a business. Like, you're still just an employee in your own business. So I would say that was a big part of it. I think that was also the thing, like, I kind of created, and like, although it obviously was paying way better than my old 9 to 5, it was kind of like I'd created a 9 to 5 for myself, that I couldn't
Yeah.
really get away from. And it actually works, because I'm sure, like, as any entrepreneur can relate, it's like it actually ends up being like a 16-hour day or 14-hour day most
Yeah.
days. So you've actually created something, even though it's paying you better per hour, it's probably not worth it, especially with the mental piece you have to go up to,
Yeah.
achieve it. So
100%.
yeah,
And I
I would
think,
say like getting away from that was also a
yeah,
big factor in it all.
yeah. I was gonna say I agree with you completely. I think a lot of people they say they want to grow the business, but they don't actually define what it looks like. So it's like,
Mm,
let's say they
mm,
have it, but then what do they actually do with the time? Like,
mm,
let's say they
mm,
get the employees, all of that. For you, what did you actually want to do with the extra time that you
mm,
would get
mm.
from getting yourself out?
For sure. So I wanted to use it to, work more on actually building a brand around the agency. I think with the
Mm.
way we moving, especially with, like, I mean, with anything, when the market gets saturated, you do need a brand, you need to stand out. I would also like, I think I also see the potential in a personal brand and really leveraging that, not only for, agency clients, but potentially moving into a space where, we are really involved in maybe the equity side of brands, and helping them scale up, potentially doing some consulting, which obviously also comes with, not fame, but like more notoriety and authority in a space. And that was actually something we were able to achieve in the process. So it was pretty cool. We now, or I myself, are now consulting for one of Iman Gadzi's
Mm.
teams on the e-commerce side, which has been fantastic. And that was obviously through, great results, being able to have the time to push my personal brand a little bit harder, and then getting noticed by their team at just the right time. So yeah, like, that was definitely a goal of it all, and it's been awesome to get my foot in the door there. But yeah, I would say, like, essentially, like, the big thing was just having something that could actually operate at scale. Like, that was also another one. Was, I remember, like, at the beginning of the year we scaled up to kind of where we are now, but it was just chaos. Like, my brain was everywhere. was kept like, because it's like you're trying to also then make sure you're getting all the work done, show each client the attention it needs. We had some contractors, but no real systems in place. There wasn't that much ownership on work or client communications, things like that. So yeah, it was just chaos. It was more just firing from the hip and hoping that we were doing well, but there wasn't any process or there were no systems put in place to ensure that it all ran smoothly. So yeah, that was another big part of it all.
100%. And I mean, like that's obviously in the past. If we look at it now, it's like, obviously, I mean, people watching this don't know, but like guys in the program, they look up to what you've done now, both in terms of like you signing the clients, but also like the way that you've transitioned into systemizing everything, getting like the operations manager, all of that. And I feel like a lot of people watching are probably wondering like, okay, this sounds great. I can relate to this Thailand, holiday situation. I guess what were the first things that we focused on when we actually started together?
So the one big thing was, I remember showing you like all my sales processes and outreach methods, and you were kind of like, because maybe for context as well, like I built up a bit of a following in the fitness space, so I had a lot of like social proof, especially on social media, on the Instagram side, and then also like on LinkedIn, I did have a pretty good network that I just wasn't leveraging. So you were kind of like, well, listen, you don't like doing the email outreach. It ends up being a bit of a waste of time. Have you like considered using your social platform? And I was like, I've tried it a little bit here and there, but I just hadn't been consistent. I hadn't really tried anything. And I think in the past when I had, it was kind of like, I just fire off a thing of like, this is what we can do for you. This is what we've done in the past. Like it was just kind of like, a ton of text at the prospect, as opposed to, rather trying to push the meeting, being like, listen, we have something that could potentially work for you, creating a bit of curiosity in that, and rather pushing the sales call as opposed to going straight for the close on the DM, which obviously is just, in hindsight, it's like so silly, but it is what it is. So yeah, that was a big part of it. The second thing was, you also just said to me like, which areas are you involved in the business and where have you kind of passed that responsibility on to others? And in my mind, I thought I had, because I think like there's a bit of a like, I don't know what the word would be for it like right now, but it, like hiring someone and putting someone in a role, it feels like you've alleviated the pain, but oftentimes fixed that problem, but oftentimes like you haven't let go of the control. So now what you've actually done is like it's like a band-aid, but like you've got like an open wound. You think that it's closed because like you don't really look at it, and like you've done what you think you need to do, but you haven't essentially like given them SOPs. You haven't handed over the control and allowed them to build confidence in that role. So like you're still, even though you've hired someone, they're still like saying, oh, listen, what should we do? They're checking all the work through you, which obviously to a degree is important, but a lot of the stuff can be systemized. A lot of processes can be put in place to ensure that there's as little touch as possible, like with me, for example, as the business owner, but then having the systems that ensure that quality control is still done, certain things are still checked before obviously having a detrimental impact on a client that you've obviously worked really hard to sign, and also then has a reflection on your actual agency as a whole. So yeah, I would say that was like, those were the two key things, was really like moving me from being this kind of like octopus in the center to building a structure around me and protecting my peace, and systemizing that process. I know even before I got involved in the course, I remember we went for a coffee and you were showing me how to use Notion, potentially looking at that, the power of also just like outsourcing and also giving responsibility to some of those people of like, listen, I want to build this thing, I don't really know where to start with it, or I don't really want to do it, like would you be keen to have a look at that? And that was something that I offloaded onto one of my operations managers, and she just absolutely smashed it. Like obviously it took a little bit of like a trust at first, which she did a really good job on, and then yeah, we were able to like just I gave it to her as a project, and she built this absolute beast of an ops HQ, which is just it's amazing. So
you definitely have the cleanest Notion I've ever seen. Like everyone in the program says that. It's so organized, and it's so like there's a lot of people that have like this database thing, but it just looks like clunky and like messy and spreadsheets. But yours is actually like effective, but it also looks super clean. So like you're using
Thank
it
you,
as a
bro. Appreciate
client-facing tool as well.
it.
Um, Obviously, one of the operation, like getting the operations manager, is one of the things that we recommend. I guess
Mm,
what
mm.
was that like, and what are some of the benefits of it?
Yeah, for sure. So I think at first I was like, as I mentioned earlier, like that octopus structure. Like I was the, this like clients would, if they needed something, they'd come to me. Or for example, they'd message on the group, and then in the early days of kind of building this operations manager role, the like customer success manager who was managing it, she would then kind of reach out to me and be like, so what should I say? What should I do? Like she wanted to take responsibility, which I so appreciated. Like that was kind of what I was looking for in an employee, which is great. So having that drive to want to improve and do better, I think that's actually probably one of the biggest parts, was also like just finding the right person. Like she's or she still is, like she's still with me. She's incredibly keen to always like learn, and she's incredibly keen to like find more areas in the business that she can take responsibility, which that's obviously a blessing in itself. I think if you hire someone who is there to do the absolute minimum, I don't think I would have got here as quickly as possible from an operational standpoint. So that was a big part of it. But yeah, just building up the confidence, being also open with them and just saying like, listen, I want you to fill this role. What are some things that you feel you would need? And then I would also be like, okay, these are some things that I think would also be necessary. So for example, like she was like, okay, cool. Well, how about we build out like an FAQ, section for her. And then, for example, when a client asks a question and I give an answer either to her directly or to the client, she would then go and save that under the FAQ. So then, and also with the search function on Notion, then what would happen is, for example, if a client asked a similar question, she could then plug in the question and she'd be recommended an answer through that Notion dashboard. So that also built more confidence for her to then take the lead on that. And now it also adds a bit of a buffer, like having her on the client comms as well, as like, even if it is a question that only I can answer, or it's like something to do with the billing or the accounts, whatever, then she can always just message me and be like, I just letting you know, like this client message, whatever, we just need a response to let them know what to do. So yeah, it's been like, just golden. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who also runs an agency the other day, and Shane, he was just like, dude, I'm like hating what I've built. It just feels like I like working all the time. He was away recently and in a different time zone, which also then caused him to experience pretty similar thing to me. And he just said like, and they're also operating at a massive scale. They do have team members, but he's still very involved in the process. And I was like, well, dude, I need to tell you, like, I'm just so grateful for my team and the systems and the process that are in place. Because, even when I'm having a rough week or things are busy, and especially when I started doing a lot of the consulting as well for Iman and his team, it meant that obviously my time was then pulled during the week. So knowing that my team could still operate without me, that's been a game changer.
Yeah, man, that's brilliant. And there's probably so many people watching it. I would think, like, do you have any advice for an agency owner who isn't starting out? They have clients, maybe it's like 5 to 15, but they're in that situation where it's like Slack messages every day, all day, nighttime, daytime, doing all the delivery. They may even have team members, but it's like they're still coming to them with everything. Do you have any advice for them to actually move out of it and remove them as like that octopus link from everything?
Yeah. I would say like you definitely need to find like a customer success or an ops manager or someone to do that for you. I
Yeah,
think I've realized more and more just how much of a time suck it is. And also just from like a
yeah,
mental capacity, like it just kills, especially like for me, like our big leverage point is, paid ads. And with the way that things are moving, it's obviously geared more towards creative. And if my brain is fried and I can't actually think, it actually is a disservice to my clients and my team, and I can't
yeah,
actually help at the same degree that I could. So yeah, in terms of advice, I would say definitely get an ops manager. The systemization of it all is incredibly important. So ensuring that that ops manager, either if they've got experience in the industry, that's fantastic, especially if it's the industry you operate in, because it means that they're going to understand the terminology, they're going to understand, like, or at least have a general idea of how things work.
yeah.
So that's definitely a plus. But yeah, I would say just systemizing everything, like put FAQs in, so that your team members as empowered as possible, and also just to, like, because I think the trust element can be quite tough, because it's like, especially when it's just been you building it all, like you have a very deep emotional attachment to, you know, the output or the agency and the way it's perceived and the way clients feel in it and whatever. Like it becomes quite a personal relationship. So I would say like you also just have to take the leap and kind of give trust over to those individuals, which it comes with, like, obviously the more competent they are, the more you're going to trust them. But yeah, I would say like giving over that trust and really just, you know, I think like the big thing is you just have to, like, I think, sit with yourself, put your like schedule down on paper, and like really like micro analyze, like where do you spend your time, how many messages do you receive a day or a week or whatever, how do you feel at the end of the week, how do you feel with interactions with clients, team members, like, and I think you then start to realize like your time is not being used as effectively as it should be. As opposed to, I mean, even now, like, I mean, we were having a brief conversation about, you know, how, like, I'm already thinking, I'm like, okay, cool. So, you know, like 5 years from now, what I want that campaign structure or like the company structure to look like. How can we, you know, plug people in so that everyone's the best at what they do, and they potentially have everything that they need. And I say 5 years, but I mean, we could probably do it within a year or two if we really push hard. So it's like, I think being able to focus more on the business development is such an underrated thing. And I think it's so ironic because, like, if I think about like when I've like messaging I used at the beginning of my, like when we were doing outreach through emails, one of the key things was I'd be like, you know, as a business owner, you should be working on the business, not in the business. And that's kind of essentially where we would then take the role of, you know, helping them generate more sales through their paid ads, whatever it is. But it's ironic because then you fall into the trap of then becoming in the, like, working in the business and not on the business. So yeah, I would say like the best thing to do is like the reflection thing is big, because I think you then start to realize really like how much it's impacting you. And yeah, I think that exercise you took me through, where you, like, part of it is also reflection, but that like octopus diagram, it's just like you and all the points of contact you have in your day, and how much like you could actually free up your mind by just creating barriers and different like almost like bottlenecks to get to you, which is I think really important.
Yeah, like I agree with you completely. So just like taking a look at everything that you're doing, putting yourself in the center, and just mapping everything that links to. So everything from every single client, like you can't just put like one circle for clients. It's like every single one of them, because they're all messaging you. So that's like 12 people, 5 people on your team, like every single sales conversation you're having, I don't know, every single girlfriend you have, like literally everything. It's all just there linked to you. And it's like, if there's no one else helping you there, like you're just ending every day burnt out, you know?
Literally, you're like a glorified call center rep, just the whole day. That's all you're doing, really. And I think even to go further than that is like, you know, sometimes the clients reaching out to you on the Slack channel, and they're reaching out to you in private DM. And then you've got your boys group chat, and they want to make plans because there's a rugby on the weekend. And then you've got your partner who's also trying to reach out to you because they want to see you. And then you've got your family also worried because they can see you've got like dark rings under your eyes and you haven't slept in like 2 days, and they're worried that like you're going to burn out and crash. And I think that's also the reality, is like you then also get to a point where like your health starts to diminish, and then you're like, you're like, if I go down tomorrow, the whole ship sinks. As opposed to like knowing that like your company actually becomes more bulletproof. And I think also like a reality to face, and something I was reflecting on the other day, is like as most small businesses, you know, like margins aren't great. Like if you look at, like, I was chatting to a friend of mine he's in wholesale, and his margins are like 5 or 10% if they're lucky, like depending on how much they're selling. Just because the price of their product is so high. So in order for it to work, they have to work at volume. It's the only way that they succeed. Or they just hire very cheap, which they can't afford to because it's not that technical what they do. But anyways, it's like it's such small margins. And then you look at, like, as for example, an agency, like you should be at least like 30 to 50% margins, depending on the size of your team and what like stage you are in scaling. Like obviously you go through a process of high margin, you hire, margin comes down, then you go hire retainer or more volume, and you kind of continue on that process of climbing the stairs. But I think like being okay with even breaking even for a couple months, or like just having enough profit that like it covers your salary, but then, you know, or whatever you pull from the business to survive, because obviously with a cash business, it can be a great lifestyle supporter. But I think being able to like take the risk of like, saying goodbye to margins for a little bit, because the investment ends up, being like tenfold in some situations. And I think that's also been great. Another great thing has also been is just um, part of working on the personal brand has also allowed me to connect with some really amazing individuals who are just killing it especially in the e-commerce space. And just hearing the kind of like overhead some of these businesses have, and how they,
Yeah.
for like, for example, will, take a loss for 4 months because they know they're going to add an extra 10 million over like a 1 or 2 month period if they take the risk and, just say goodbye to their margins or their profit for a little bit. So I think
Yeah.
yeah, the cool thing with an agency is your margins are so good, it does give you the opportunity to do that and just keep improving the business. And rather than, and I know like it's a mutual mentor of both of ours, but he recently put out a thing which has been very relevant to me as well. It's like, rather than focusing on like how rich can you make yourself, it's like focusing on how can you bring as much value as possible to your clients, to your team, and how can you really build something that will last. Because I think especially in the SMMA, like digital marketing space, there is a tendency based on some gurus that are in the space to be like, this is a get rich quick thing, and this is a generate as much cash as you can so you can go live the lifestyle that you see on social media, where you on holiday on islands and yachts and things like that, driving cars, whatever. But yeah, I think when you start to treat it like more of a business and realize that like that dream is sold to you because obviously there's an agenda, like a course is trying to be pushed, as opposed to building a business that can really sustain and potentially be something either you sell or you use as leverage to get into bigger deals. I think that's where you really start to see the value in it as well.
Yeah. And I think like, because you made such a good point, you made a couple good points, but it's like, ironically, the more long term you think and the better you make the product and the more stable you make the business, ironically, the more cash you make in the long term. It's like short term, if you just want to make quick money, it's like just try and sign clients, don't even worry about delivery, just get cash in, and then it's like buy your Rolex. But for the people who are thinking big, long term, actually build a business, like they're the ones who get to 8 figures, 9 figures, 10 figures. So I think what you're doing is completely right, especially with a 5-year plan. Most people can't even think further out than like 2 weeks.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, even recently, I know we were talking a bit about structures, but like, I was even looking the other day, I was like, what if I were to just say goodbye to all my margin and just run, even if I ran at a loss for a little bit and use some of the cash flow we built up, like, how much better would my business be in 3 months? And because I think, like, oftentimes when I think about it, I'm like, oh, but if I like, delay the process a little bit and keep the margins, like, it will be better, which, I mean, obviously for some people, you do need that margin in order to survive or, keep living your lifestyle. But I think like, if you can say goodbye to margins, or at least keep them as tight as possible just for a short period of time, and look to find good talent, put good systems in place, potentially invest in softwares that will improve your service, so that you could potentially, in like after your 3 months of kind of going through it, you're now in a position where you can double your retainers or potentially even triple those retainers, and essentially at scale that will then maximize your revenue like crazy. It's almost like thinking of it as an investment as opposed to like a freelance type approach.
Yeah, 100%. One of the last things I wanted to ask is, I mean, it seems like the bookings, that is a bit of an issue, but beyond that, like you've never really had a problem with acquisition. Like once you got the conversation going with the people, like you're going to close.
Exactly.
Do you have any advice for people who are in your spot, in that they have a great service, their clients are actually happy, they may get referrals, but on the acquisition side, they just don't have like a predictable system to actually get people in the door? Do you have any advice for those agency owners?
Well, besides using AGP, I would say a lot of it comes down to, I would say like our biggest success was looking at what we actually had access to and doing less. Like, I think like at one stage I was like, I remember when we started, I was like, dude, do I need to, like, you tell me what I need to do and I'll do it. And I was like, do I need to like go and film some ads and get a VSL and a webinar put together and create a funnel? Like, do I need to do all that? And you were just like, well, no, like what do you have at your disposal right now? And it was almost like simple is often going to be better. And yeah, like from what I've been doing more recently is just, finding brands that we want to work with. Some of them, like how I do it every day now is when reaching out is like, there'll be a few brands that like I desperately want to work with that are like out of reach. There'll be some brands that are kind of on par with, they like, it's like they would be performing pretty well and they're looking for minor tweaks. And then brands who like desperately need our services, who maybe aren't going to be the biggest retainers, but they're good to keep those conversations alive with when clients are tough. Then like when getting clients is tough, or budgets dry out for some other brands, or they get to a place where they are happy. Because that's, I mean, one thing you come to realize, I think we all go in with the expectation that all these brands want to be billion dollar brands, but for some people it is genuinely just they want to get to a certain point and they hit capacity and they're happy staying there. So yeah, I think it's good to keep that constant flow alive. And that's something I've realized, because like beforehand it was also, and again it comes down to the team. When you don't have a team to kind of pass that on to, you almost like start to dread yourself, because you kind of like, and you'll self-sabotage, because you're like, I don't want to do outreach or book meetings, because if I do, I then have to handle the service and I don't have time. And then you go through this period of like the tap is on, tap is off, tap is on, tap is off. And I remember that was also a big thing when chatting to you was, we like, that's what had happened. We'd hit capacity, stop all sales, and then we kick up again. And like, honestly, like we did that. And more recently, like we've literally been booking like probably like at least 10 appointments a week, like anywhere from like on average, if we look at the bit, it's probably like on a low week, it's maybe like 6 or 7, and on a high week, 12, sometimes even 20 appointments, when, things really kick off. And obviously that's per week is insane. So yeah, I would say like, I'd say it all comes down to like just understanding like the structure. I think honestly, it's probably the most simple worksheet that you put me through, but it really made me think and realize a lot as to what I needed to do. But also just giving me the guidance and the help. I think even like from a hiring perspective in the past, I would have been like, oh, I need to hire this role, this person. And you were like, but like, and I was like, how do I do it? And you're like, well, what does their job responsibility look like? And you're like, just write down everything they'd be responsible for in a day. And that's what you're looking for. Like, what do you want this person to actually do for you? And I think it's like what I really, really appreciated was your simplified approach. Like you're almost just like, let's strip it back. Like, don't worry about, the flashy big thing. You don't need this crazy webinar with like, you don't have to go mad and get ChatGPT to write you this massive job spec that actually means nothing. Like, what do you really want from this person? Like, what do you really, how do you really offer value to potential prospects? How do you, make them curious enough that they want to have a conversation with you? And yeah, a lot of that came from, just simplifying and putting it on paper, which was a big part of it. But I also think like one thing that is maybe underrated that I think people might not focus on when, joining something like this is the mentorship through the actual like phone calls. Like that's such a big part. So like for a number of reasons, I think the first thing was that, as a solo founder, it can sometimes be quite lonely, and you can sometimes feel like you're the only one going through it. Even though you've got your team, and they're like, I'm very grateful to have a team that they understand the graft that goes in, and they're very appreciative. But you can hit points where you're like, maybe it's just me, or like maybe there's this issue with the market, and then you'll be on a call with. And I think that's what's also awesome about you being South African, and then also like being South African myself is like, we'll just think, oh, brands in South Africa, they got no money to spend on ads, or because you're getting no's and whatever. And then there'll be a guy on the call who's like, bro, I signed 5 clients this week in South Africa. And you're like, okay, well, it's obviously not a problem. Like, I think it's really good to like break those limiting beliefs being part of a space. Or like, for example, I remember like even with Vimal, where like he's like, oh, he signs a 40K a month retainer, and you're like, bro, that is mad. Like that's my goal retainer after like however many, like a year or whatever it is. Like I think it's so cool to be surrounded by guys who are just smashing it in the space. And obviously that's testimony to the course you put together. Because I mean, I know we were all lost to some degree. I know some of us had created better structures and in different spaces, but I think the calls are exceptionally good for not only keeping morale high, but breaking those limiting beliefs, obviously having your questions answered in as personal as possible. So it's not just some generic customer service manager or whatever. It's like you're actually involved in that. I think that's such a valuable part of it. Yeah, I know I've rambled a lot, but obviously I've only got good things to say. So
Well, that was brilliant. I really do appreciate it.
Sure, bro.
it's, I mean, the last thing I just want to ask is, where can people find you?
So Instagram, you can check me out. I think if you just type in Jay Fremantle, you'll find it. LinkedIn, if you guys want to check out the agency, it's FMG Digital, FMG with a hyphen digital.com. Yeah, you can check out. We hopefully going to be revamping the site eventually. Now that the team's in place, it's actually, I can do those kind of things, what I've been meaning to do forever, is vamp up the site, the stuff that doesn't really matter, but it's nice to have, and it like obviously elevates the business a bit. But revamping up the site, focusing a little bit more on organic content. Because I think that was also, like, just kind of before we end, I think that was also a big thing that I really, really enjoyed about your approach, was that you were very focused on, almost like conditioning the prospect before they got on the call, and like the importance of inbound marketing. And I remember like just seeing like the system that you'd built, and I would like see you like at Bootleggers or going for a walk around the area that we stay in. I won't mention the suburb in case people try and stalk you, but seeing you just going for a walk in the middle of the day, and I was like, man, this guy's got it figured out. And I was like, but like you were like churning out content, and I remember like I felt very like when I consumed your content, I could feel that like emotional desire being spoken to. So I knew like you'd created something that was awesome and it was authentic. And I mean, hearing how you were doing it afterwards was like, I was like, dude, seriously? Like, it seems like it's honestly like, you're typing it on the run. Meanwhile, like, you've got all these amazing systems and processes put in place that allow you to operate at that kind of scale. And I remember that being a big part of it, because I see the benefit in going that route, using inbound content. I think gone are the days where you can send out a bunch of, and again, this could be a limiting belief, and maybe it's what I choose to see, but gone are the days where you can just send out a ton of, email marketing assets or whatever. I have these like instantly campaigns that just churn out, or even with DMs. I mean, we even like, although it's working really well, there is a limitation to it where, you end up in the requested, and, the owner doesn't see it. And yes, you can try your best to get hold of them without seeming too desperate. But I think the inbound is like invaluable. I think it also allows you to, charge higher retainers. It, as you say, it makes the sales call a lot quicker. And I felt that from the clients that, when we have put out content, from the prospects that have either reached out to us through inbound, or when we've had a sales call, they'll be like, oh yeah, I saw this, or oh yeah, okay, cool, yeah, I saw this post you put out, oh, you run that brand? Yeah, I see the ads all the time, they're so cool. And like, being able to like leverage that has been huge. So yeah.
Brother, it's been great having you on. It's been great
Thank you for
having you in
having
the
me.
program. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate it.